What would you do if your micromanager fired your talented coworker and tanked a project you'd built from the ground up? In today's story, the protagonist gets his payback through a single, anonymous survey link. Several years ago, I was working at one of those big, household name hardware stores. The pay was decent for the area, and there was a real path for upward mobility. After about a year and a half, I hadn't really found a specific department to call home. But I learned fast. So the company turned me into a kind of Swiss Army employee. I could handle hardware, talk you through a plumbing issue, mix paint, cut keys, and prepare installation contracts. I knew the features and, more importantly, the flaws of every appliance model we sold. I was happy with this, as I was building a reputation as the guy who could get anything done. 2 years into my tenure, the company rolled out a new program that I was uniquely qualified for. They created a whole new position for me, as part of a service marketed as an all-in-one interior renovation and remodeling solution. My job was to assist the designer, Sarah, with product selection, provide in-depth product information, draw up contracts, and handle local marketing for the service. Everyone was genuinely excited about the potential. The only catch? It was 2015, and I was still only making $10 an hour for this specialized role. The real problem was that the program was brand new, and nobody, not even corporate, seemed to know how it should actually work. Sarah, the designer, had to figure most of it out on her own, while I did my best to get her up to speed on all the store systems and product knowledge I'd picked up. The program had some immediate, glaring issues. First, it was way too expensive for our local market. We were on the poorer side of town, where nearly everyone knows a contractor or a tradesman with connections. Our service was charging, on average, an extra $3,000 for a small bathroom remodel on labor alone. And that didn't even include the consulting and design fees. Second, the product had to come from one of our stores, which severely limited the options for customers. And third, absolutely no one knew the service existed. We had a rocky start. Corporate hadn't provided any marketing materials or even photos of completed jobs to show potential clients. We were on our own. So, we made our own stuff. I put together a short video advertising the service, and management approved my request to use the company card for a TV and a media player to have it looping in the store. Sarah and I built our own little showcases, called vignettes, to show off our design skills. We became a real partnership. Slowly, it started to work. Coworkers would page me to talk to customers planning big projects. And we started hitting, and then exceeding, our sales numbers. We even ranked number 7 in the entire region for a brand new program, which wasn't bad at all. And that's when our assistant manager, Mark, entered the picture. He had been supportive at the beginning, but I think he grew impatient with the problems we couldn't control, like sloppy contractors who refused to fix their mistakes, or customers who, after seeing the final price, would back out after taking up hours of our time. Just as we found our rhythm, about 8 months in, Mark decided things weren't moving fast enough for his liking. Mark made a critical decision at that moment, born from pure impatience. He was completely unaware that this single act of taking over would ultimately lead to his own downfall. He couldn't set the prices or discipline the outside contractors. So he decided Sarah, the designer, was the one to blame. In his mind, she didn't know what she was doing. And he was going to make some changes. His changes involved hovering, radiating bad energy, and making terrible suggestions. He simply didn't grasp the scope of what it took to get a customer from an initial idea to a completed, successful renovation. He forced us to cut corners, rushing sales through without any concern for liability or realistic timelines. Predictably, customers felt pressured and got nervous. They started backing out. We came to a dead stop. After months of hard work building our client base, we suddenly had no customers for the first time in 6 months. Obviously, Mark concluded he wasn't being authoritative enough. So he went harder. He fired Sarah. This single action revealed Mark's greatest fatal flaw, his arrogant belief that authority could solve any problem. A short-sightedness that ultimately sealed his fate. It reminds me of what one person later said. Reflecting on this type of manager, it's always nice to see some know-it-all asshat put down several pegs. I had one of those micromanagers who've never actually done the job but loved to complain when we couldn't achieve the impossible. That's when I lost my patience. I'm normally a chill guy, but I had worked my tail off for that company, making peanuts on the promise that it was leading somewhere. I had put up with incompetent managers who got their jobs just because they started working there at 18 and never left. Mark's toxic, "I will lead, you will follow" attitude was the last straw. So I started subtly bullying him back. I'd make fun of him in a light, teasing way that made it impossible for him to react without looking like he was losing control. It worked. He backed off and left me alone to run the program, since I was the only one left who knew how. But I was still furious about what he did to Sarah, who had become a good friend. I wasn't finished. Eventually, they hired a new designer, and Mark had me moved back to my old Swiss Army role. I was passed over for several promotions I was qualified for and got pretty discouraged. I was done with the place. Then, one day, an email landed in our inboxes, a link to an anonymous manager review survey. I noticed the store computers used an always-on, generic user profile. I wrote down the survey link and confirmed with a coworker that the links weren't unique to each employee. That was my opening. Throughout the day, I visited every department computer I could. In the quiet of the paint section, by the humming refrigerators and appliances, at the dusty terminal in lumber, I wrote a review for Mark. I submitted about 10 of them in total. They were all different. Some were just bad, but I made the good ones sound even worse. Written from the perspective of an employee who didn't realize they were describing terrible management. Things like, "Mark is great at pushing us to get sales done quickly. Even if customers seem unsure, he really encourages them to just make a decision." I didn't lie. I just said the things people don't normally say out loud, with vague examples so it couldn't be traced back to me. The change was immediate. Mark became withdrawn. He would barely look anyone in the eye. The alpha male swagger was gone. A couple of weeks later, he officially resigned his position as assistant manager. He took a new job on the other side of the store as an exterior designer, basically the same role he had forced Sarah out of. He was now in the designer's shoes. I left a couple of months after that for a tech support job. While I was in training for my new role, friends from the old store told me that Mark had been fired right around Christmas, just like Sarah had been. Maybe he finally learned something. At the very least, he learned exactly how my friend Sarah felt. People sometimes ask if Sarah and I ever considered starting our own company together. And while we didn't, I was glad to know she was doing well. And even happier to have delivered a bit of justice. In the end, pushing out good people to assert your own authority is a losing strategy. Micromanagement doesn't build success. It breeds resentment. And that resentment will always find an outlet. So, let me ask you, have you ever had a manager who thought they knew your job better than you did? And how did you handle it?